And then, oh my god, my fucking ashtray is going fucking crazy. Lightning, oh my god. All right.
It's like Jim Cantori needs to be there.
I don't even know who that is. Oh, dude, it's crazy.
The dude from the Weather Channel, man.
Oh, really?
Look at that.
Oh,
South Florida in all its glory.
yeah. I'm here at the scene. The wind is blowing at 6 knots. I don't even know what 6 knots is. But yeah, we're mobile right now because I don't want to set up a laptop. And
the rain.
you're live. That's horrible. Why'd you do that to me?
I don't know. Just cause it was time.
Just cause it was time. All right. By the way, I love this Splendida shirt. That's one of my favorites you've done so far.
Thank you. I'll have it up on the website here soon.
Nice.
But yeah, so Phil is on his phone because I guess a miniature hurricane decided to show up and roll through. So he's going to be on his phone at least temporarily. Maybe if things get better, he'll switch over to his computer, but it doesn't matter because here we are, episode 171 of Snakes and Stogies, part of the Herpetoculture Network, which is part of a great community. And then that is also brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. Check them out. Facebook, Instagram, go on the website, look at racks, look at cages. If you end up wanting to buy something, when you're at checkout, in the discount code section, put THN. Save yourself a little bit of money. Get yourself something nice. If you are on Instagram or also subbed to our YouTube channel, I just posted a video of the XA3 Bio 18 that I just finished. The Persimmon, female Persimmon is in that now, decked it out. A lot of you are here on a weekly basis and you've heard me talk about this build and stuff, and it finally happened and I finally got it done. So did a cool video on that, sort of just outlining the whole process of that. Talked a little bit about the crepe myrtle perches that I make and how I go about doing those. And I'm happy with it. It looks good. Feedback's been really cool. She seems pretty content with it. And
I think it looks good, man. I still think you got to have some kind of backdrop eventually, but I think it's a hell of a start, man. It looks great.
I just don't want to deal with like trying to apply the background and all that stuff. I don't know. It's not as green as I was hoping it would be. So I guess I should have expected that at least a little bit with the bamboo drying out over the last couple months. But I put it in there and I was like, this is awfully like drab, awfully earth tony for the Vietnam type deal. But I'm happy with it. She's happy with it. That's all that matters. It looks good.
Yeah, man, I really like that video of her all sprawled out in the cage. I thought it looked great. Very mamba-ish.
Dude, they're a great species for that. And I need to do a video on that species in particular, which I've been planning to do one. I just wanted to get more time with them before I, tried to, come out with a video of any position sort of authority on the species, since I haven't had a whole lot of time with them. But I think it's I've had them long enough at this point to kind of get a good feel for them and be able to say where I put them on the list of species and stuff to keep and whatnot. So at some point I'll do that here soon. The biggest struggle has been I've been shooting them on my phone, and I had to reinstall Dropbox and resubscribe to Dropbox to move the files over so I can get them on my computer, to get them into the editing software, to then be able to upload them. But I mean, now that I'm paying for Dropbox for at least the next month, I guess I can go ahead and do that. So
yeah, man, it can't hurt. And still, Google Drive still works good. Well, right?
See that? Yeah, and the issue with that has been like I'll upload a video, and so the video that I made yesterday, that was probably like 18 different videos that I took throughout the process. One of them was like a gig, and so all the smaller ones would upload fine. But if I tried to put that like the larger videos in there, Google Drive would just sit there and say it was uploading, and nothing would ever happen for like half a day. And so I finally was like, guess I'm gonna use Dropbox and just get it over with.
Yeah. I mean, you really can't go wrong with Dropbox.
Yeah. But it's up, it's there. Check it out. Some of the corns that have hatched out recently are starting to have their first sheds. So start getting everybody sexed and then get some feeding trials underway.
Nice.
They're looking good, man. Some of those I like Tessera, but man, some of those normal pattern babies that are coming out are just smoking. So there's gonna be some holdbacks there.
Nice.
I mean, and then the room is still kind of all over the place with me having to rearrange stuff. So that's been a little frustrating. I'm hoping to have everything sort of back to normal this weekend, or sometime this week, and have my room back, because it's been. I hate having to rearrange stuff. I hate having to do that shuffle that we're all too familiar with. But it'd be nice to have it done. I am actually planning to downsize on some things. With this rearrange, I came to to terms with the fact that I could use to thin out on some things. So within the next probably week or two, I plan on sort of getting a list together of some stuff I'm going to be parting with. Nothing chondro related, mostly some, here and there, some corns and some other stuff. So be on the lookout for that.
Nice. You gonna morph market anything or no?
I don't know. I have one. I don't. Probably not. Just because it's really not going to be that much. And I got this fly that will not go away. Oh my God. Let's see if I can get it. I think I got it. I don't know. But BlackBox cages, check them out. Got derailed there for a minute. Use the code THN at checkout, save yourself some money. Puget Sound Pythons, speaking of Morph Market, go follow them, see what they have for sale. Jeff and Kendra are awesome people that we are fortunate to call friends. Producing some awesome stuff, really choice ball python projects, and then Fulvius Apparel. So I finally put together a code for podcast listeners that I am not really posting anywhere else. So if you are listening to this, if you go to fulviusapparel.com, get yourself some shirts, use the code THN at checkout as well. And podcast network listeners will get 15% off their order. So as a thank you to all of you that hang out with us here on Mondays or listen to us after the fact, it's exclusive. You have to be listening to hear it. I don't post it publicly. What are you smoking on this windy, rainy night?
Well, I actually can you hear me okay or no? Can you hear me okay, Smitty?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, sorry, it got a little laggy from the storm. I actually got a Placencia 149. Wow, that is way farther away than I thought it was. But, Placencia. And I was actually really excited about this smoke. I haven't had one in a very long time. And then this happened. So I'm going to give it a minute and we'll see how she rolls.
I got you. I decided, so I went to the shop today after work and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get me something different. Haven't had one in a while. I got a Leaf by Oscar.
Nice.
A Maduro. So a lot of people, you see these on the shelves and a lot of people are like, do I just smoke it like this? So sort of their spiel or their gimmick is, instead of wrapping it in cellophane, they wrap it in a tobacco leaf, and they claim it helps with aging. I claim it just helps dry the cigar out even more. So the Corojo in these is fantastic. The Sumatra is fantastic. The Maduro I was never particularly crazy about, but I'm about to smoke one again for the first time in a while. And then the Connecticut's actually pretty good too.
Nice.
If you unwrap it, beneath this crunchy husk is a nice Maduro. And
I've always been good with the leaf, man. I enjoy
it was a favorite for a long time when I was first getting into cigars, man. That Sumatra especially. But I don't know. Over time, your palate changes, and Oscar Valadares, who's the people that make this, a lot of their tobacco, they use a lot of Honduran tobacco, which if you've listened to the show for any sort of extended period of time, I'm not the biggest fan of Honduran tobacco, just from a flavor standpoint. But the leaf is good. It's been good. It's good. It's good smoke.
Yeah, man, I try and keep at least one or two in the box at any given time. I think I've got one right now. But to be honest, I think the last time I smoked one was Daytona, to be brutally honest.
Are you ready for Daytona?
Oh, baby, I was born ready. Oh, the rain's starting to come. Hold on. Uh-oh.
Run, Phil.
Oh. Back to my safety awning, but I honestly, this awning is a lot taller than my last one, and I have a feeling I'm going to get soaked. So the only thing that's left right now is the microphone, the actual the microphone on the stand. I brought the computer, everything inside. So if I disconnect, I'll set myself back up inside and go from there.
I got you. See, I thought that was like you were in like a screened-in porch. Because from the angle that you've had the last couple of weeks since you've been there, it seemed like it was enclosed.
So this was that white picket fence didn't used to be there, and then when Hurricane Wilma came in 2004, there was a whole screen cage that came up to about the top of that tree, and Hurricane Wilma took that sucker right down and put it right in the pool. So it's very expensive to rebuild those things, and it just wasn't worth it. So. We got the white picket fence now. Oh man, it is whipping.
Adam wants to know if you blow away in the hurricane, if he can have your corns.
Yes, absolutely. If you can find them in the rubble. It is difficult. I forgot how difficult it is on the phone to like check the comments and stuff, but I'm looking at it now. And I saw Lisa's comment about the wind chimes, so that's why I showed them earlier. But yeah, it looks like it's starting to come down now.
I gotta be real desperate to have to use my phone for this. I don't know. It's
I just didn't want my MacBook Air to get soaked.
Yeah, no, I got it. I feel you.
I
mean, the frustration for me is like phones now don't have the 3.5 millimeter jack for headphones now, so I have to use my Bluetooth headphones, and usually the battery life on those isn't great, and then the audio quality isn't great, and it's just
and see, like right now I'm using the normal earbuds that plug in the lightning cord on the iPhone, and I always love those corded ones, man. They work like $1 million. They sound crystal clear. I mean, I don't know how it's translating on StreamYard right now, but like you in my head is crystal clear. So
yeah, I mean, you just sound like your connection's low-ish, but not horrible. Like you can understand what you're saying. It just sounds like you're circa 2005. So
yeah, man. Hey, it worked for NPR, right?
That's right.
So
I don't know how they did the Blog Talk thing for so long, man. That audio quality was enough for me to just I struggled.
Nice.
So when we started the podcast, I made a vow that we would not use Blog Talk, and that I would figure out another way to get more clarity and stuff. So here it is. The next corn clutch is due to hatch any day. That's the Ladies Island female to the Castagna Motley male. We're on day 76. So I was hoping I'd come home from work today and that they'd be hatching, and I'd see some noses popping out, but I haven't yet. So I'm going to continue to see. I moved those from the incubator like a week ago prematurely. I should have just waited until they started pipping to move them out, but the egg boxes I used for that clutch and the Baird's clutch that's next on deck to hatch, the eggs had blown up so much that they were starting to touch the lid, and so I wanted to move them into something bigger. Just out of fear of that water and the condensation and stuff drowning whatever egg was touching the top. So this corn clutch is due to hatch, but I think I may have delayed things by a couple days by moving things prematurely or jostling stuff around or whatever. I was as gentle as I could be, and the eggs are healthy and everything, but I don't know what the deal is.
Well, time will tell. I'm sure things will span out appropriately in that regard.
Well, I mean, I can't really trust my judgment anymore because after that first clutch with these hypos, where I was expecting everything to be normal just with a bunch of hets, this clutch should be, in theory, given that the female is originally wild caught, but at this point, who knows? I mean, weirder things have happened.
All right. Well, it's actually whipping pretty good, so I'm gonna hang up and then I'm
That
gonna
umbrella's barely moving.
No, but the rain's coming at me, so I'm gonna go inside and reset up. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right.
If Phil was a real man, he'd go and smoke that cigar inside. He'd set up right in the living room while his parents were watching TV or something, and just smoke like a man. Be a man. So that corn clutch is next to hatch. The Baird's het hypo clutch is due to hatch after that, and then the Rhino clutch is due to hatch while we're at Daytona, if my counting was right. And then the Jansenii is due to hatch in September, and then there's a second Baird's clutch that I was not expecting. That was a 4-egg clutch, and that should probably be hatching around the same time as the Jansenii, if I'm not mistaken, if not before that. So we'll see. So far, the Jansenii egg is looking good. No signs of any issues. I've been leaving it alone religiously, like pretending it doesn't even exist, even though it's surrounded by some other clutches in the incubator. Oh, and no, there's that second clutch from the same ghost tester female that all these hypos popped out of. That's gonna hatch probably around the time the Jansenii will as well. Those aren't in the incubator. Those are up on the top shelf of the Cambro rack, so they're pretty close to the ceiling of the room. And I'm slightly concerned that I'll forget about them and then look up and see a bunch of babies just popping out of that little tub because the lid sucks on that particular tub. Monday was fine. Work is absolutely bonkers right now. It's got me all messed up. We recorded Thursday night with Rob, and I told Rob 8:30, and Jake was like, "Why are we recording later than we normally do?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? We always record at 8:30." And he said, "No, we record at 8." And like, I'm just all over the place. Feeling a little burnt, not gonna lie. You can get a hold of me just through the THN page, the palmettocoastexotics page. Either of those, the Fulvius page, Fulvius Apparel. The squirps are doing good. I've seen some spermatophores where it looks like the male is at least attempted to procreate, but no signs of a brood yet. But they pretty much just exist at the moment. There's nothing too exciting going on there. So, but they're still kicking. All of them are doing fine. I'm gonna throw them some tiny mealworms sporadically and check on them and keep on keeping on. So I'm excited to start these feeding experiment stuff with this clutch of corns. I think there's only really I think 4 babies left to shed. And I'm going to start, if they should all have shed by Saturday. I'll weigh them on Saturday, and then I'll feed them, and then we'll kind of kick things into gear. I weighed them all again last night, just out of curiosity. There was about a 4 or 5 day difference from the time that I weighed them initially to now. And what I'm also doing is I'm averaging. So I weigh the whole group. It's a group of 12. I'm weighing that whole group individually, and then when I'm done, I'm going ahead and getting the average of all of that, and I'm going to start tracking the average of the group as well over time, just to see how that changes, if there's a positive correlation there too. And so far, what was surprising was with this weighing them the second time here yesterday, so there was one that actually gained a little bit of weight, and when I say gained a little bit of weight, I'm talking like 0.3, 0.03 grams, like tiny amounts. But then there was a few that had lost weight. Some of them, I think one of them lost almost a half a gram, and then the other ones, it was the same thing. It was like tiny little increments that they had lost, and that's without feeding them. They haven't had a first meal or anything yet, so I did that just out of curiosity to see how much had changed from the time they had first been weighed to now. Just a handful of days in between then, and interestingly enough, some of them did actually lose a decent chunk. Who knows? I just figured to get a good baseline before meals even started happening, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to get a couple weights in between that first feeding and now. So we'll see. I've got the spreadsheet made for each one, tracking the date, tracking the weight, and then as time goes by, I'll sort of put it all together in a graph. I'll probably have to get the average weights in the two groups, so the cut and not cut groups, averages those out separately and graph those overall, and that'll show kind of the group progression in general. And then if it even matters, I mean, data is data, so I guess it won't hurt if I do end up doing all of them together in an average, plotting that out, if that big gigantic total average will make any difference, or if that'll kind of just, I think that'll more so coast, is kind of my hypothesis, but we'll see. Phil just up and disappeared. Oh, okay. I see Don Gallagher. This fly is driving me absolutely nuts. I think I got it. Yeah, it's been busy though. Definitely need to downsize a little bit. Work right now is nuts, so it's been a little overwhelming, if we're being honest. Even podcast stuff, and when you're juggling full-time job that's just balls to the wall from 9 to 5 currently, juggling a family, juggling a big collection, juggling this stuff, the Fulvius stuff, it's been a lot lately. I've been going to bed pretty damn tired, so let's see. Need to figure out how to make money building vivs and growing plants and shit. With that persimmon setup, I really wanted to try and do native plants as best as I could, and so I did some Googling. It's fairly brief, just to see if there were any commonly sold plants that were like native to Vietnam, because these are Vietnamese persimmon or corulum, whatever you want to call them. And there really didn't seem to be anything that is kept or like propagated on a regular basis. That's something you can find at most, most stores or nurseries for that matter. So ended up going with that lemongrass and a spider plant. I couldn't even tell you where those are actually native to, but it is what it is. But I like the purchase worked out really well, and I'm glad I still had them. I haven't had a whole lot of time to work on those, but I had some that were already coated, and I had already sanded them and already finished them. Basically, they just needed hanger bolts and stuff in them, so I had enough to literally have it so that they go from one side to the other across multiple perches, and it creates an entire shelf basically that spans the length of the cage. It's all about using that the most space possible, that space efficiency in a given setup. Mostly it was Roy Blodgett, and his sulfurious setup with all native plants and stuff. I was like, man, I gotta do something like that, but it's tough. South American plants I'm sure are much easier to come across than Vietnamese stuff. But she seems happy. The Randy mentioned earlier, he liked the little basket looking deals. So those were some pots that Walmart had for $3, and they're not terracotta, they're concrete. So that made them a little easier to break and not have them shatter into a bunch of tiny pieces, because that was kind of my concern, was that I'd break them and I'd have nothing usable. But just a little flathead screwdriver and a hammer, just kind of chisel at it a little bit in some spots. It worked perfectly, split it right in half on some of them, and then I kept one hole. That one I actually had planned to have turned like sideways so that she could like hide in it, but then it has that hole in the bottom. And my concern, because I know it was inevitable that it would happen, is that she'd find a way to get stuck in that. So I ended up just sitting it upright and then putting some of the little bamboo with like the leaves and stuff in that, just to kind of make it look good. She could still hide out in there. I thought about putting the water bowl in there to kind of hide it some. But at the end of the day, really, the only person that's in there looking at that on a regular basis is me and maybe the wife if she's in there vacuuming or whatever. But I'm happy with it. That's all that matters. Gotta play with the UV light a little bit. I don't think I seated the UV bulb all the way. Got to go back in there and unscrew there's a cage, like a cover over the light, so that the animals can't come in direct contact with it. I got to just unscrew that and adjust it some and put it back. But let's see, Henry said most plants out there are South American. You would have to go to a specialty place for Vietnamese, Thai, Malaysian, etc. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And I have a feeling that even if I did find some, I don't see them doing particularly well in enclosed boxes. I think that if that grass will take off, that lemongrass, if that grass takes off, it'll look good. I let the wife in there, yes. She's not really going in there right now because everything's all over the place, but normally, yeah, she'll go in there and, check on the rhinos. She loves the rhinos, so she'll go in there and mess with them a little bit. I'm excited for rhino babies. Eggs on those are looking good too. Be pretty sweet to see some of those little babies coming out. What would you keep in a room that was high 60s year round? Thinking Russian rats. Basement is an icebox. Russian rats, definitely Diones. Diones, bimaculata, Brettles. I don't think if you had, obviously if you're keeping stuff down there, you're not just going to have them ambient. You'll have some sort of hotspot for them, I'm sure. But Brettles would fit in there just fine. But are you worried about moisture retention from keeping the plants watered? No, because I'm not really planning to like soak them on a regular basis. Like when I water my plants now, I let them get pretty dry, and with the pothos in particular that's in most of the cages, when I see it to start to wilting, I'm like, okay, it needs some attention. So I'll top them off and then leave them be. So with these, I'm not planning on, misting them necessarily. I prefer to, when it comes to the plants in particular, I prefer to water those directly. There's not a ton of substrate in the bottom of that. I put enough to cover the roots and make sure that the plants had enough to kind of plant themselves and root. And I'll just water those directly. And then ambient humidity, the black box cages, they don't have a ton of ventilation as is, but they have enough. So I haven't had any issues with the Jansenii or anything else that's in the black box cages. At least like your 3-footers and larger that have basically the vents in the corners. Those have all been fine, sort of as is, out of the box. I haven't had any problems, so I'm not too worried about it. It seems like it's actually kind of the sweet spot for ventilation, where it retains enough to keep things, the ambient humidity a little higher, but it's not so much that you're not holding on to anything and it's just bone dry in there all the time. So I think they found a good medium for the two. The BioGs, it's a little different because those have the screen sides, so they're much more open. There he is. But even in those, like the only thing I had issues with keeping in the BioGs was there was a small chondro I kept in one for a while, and I just had shed issues. But that was 100%, I think, because the retention of humidity was not really all that high. So it just, it is what it is. As soon as I put it in the Cambro rack, went right back to shed and normal and everything. So the rhinos, it's perfect for them. The rhinos need a lot of ventilation. If I was using it for other stuff, like, it'd be great for Neurodia. And boy, look at that hat. If you need high ventilation, get the BioG with the screen sides. Hello.
I'm back with a real microphone in the
I don't think your mic input is set to your mic though.
Really?
Doesn't sound like it. Got that blog talk effect going on still.
Yeah, it's on USB device.
Oh. Maybe it's just a connection then.
It could very well be. People in the chat, tell me if I sound weird. So yeah, I'm in the venomous room right now, or I can't say that anymore. Now it's just the snake room, and I just checked the Govee. It's like 86.8.
Oof! Hell no, man.
But it's only 36% humidity, and outside where I just was is 86 degrees. Not exact because it's not a Govee, with 70% humidity. So. Yeah, It's actually nicer in the snake room. Thank you, my arid critters.
Grab out one of them there Cerastes and show it all for us there. Just grab one with your bare hands like a real YouTuber.
Oh, hold on, they're in a stack. Hang on.
Because if you have YouTube and you have venomous, you're obligated by societal law to be an absolute moron in how you handle them. Look at those ventilation holes. I see nothing.
Well, I can't open the thing.
Can't or won't?
Won't.
They're just glorified sand boas, Phil. Come on. Don't be scared. Okay, it must be my connection or something then, because like I said, Phil just sounds...
Well, what's interesting is there's a cottonmouth on top of that one, and the cottonmouth was like, what the hell's going, like all like looking around, like, what just happened? Here, you can see the label. Hold on.
My neighbor.
Here, that's what it looks like. There you go. Cloud Force Design, check them out.
What's new down there?
Oh man, you done messed me up with this hat.
Really?
You done messed me up. I was like, man, Not a big fan of trucker hats. It's just not my thing. But you know what? I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot. And it's comfortable as hell.
It's all about finding the right one, man.
Exactly. And then I sweat a lot, man. I mean, South Florida. Let's be real. I'm a husky guy, and this thing it's gonna get the sweat. You know what I mean? The stains, the salt, but I still don't have it dripping down my face like other hats. But all joking aside, excuse me, I don't keep Alterna, and you and I have spoken about this. And Chris Paintjob, that glorious man of him, he messages me and says, do you need Alterna? Or no, he says, you need Alterna with no punctuation. So I replied with, are you telling me or are you asking me?
Is that a question or a
and
statement
he's just like both. And then him and I went down a whole rabbit hole and then of conversation about Alterna. And then I basically realized, I was like, I never got into them, not because I don't like them, because I'm a Lamprey Peltis guy through and through, but it always seemed like it was that like upper echelon, that top tier keeper. You know what I mean? And I'm a big boy now.
Maybe 27 years ago.
But I can keep Alterna, right? And I feel like my anxiety about getting babies to eat, I was, casting that subconsciously onto adults or just keeping in general. You know what I mean? And then I just went down the Alterna rabbit hole, and I've just been looking at phenotypes and looking at lines and just looking at them. So they're on the Daytona list now. Yay. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yep. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So between you and Mike Gillen and Chris Paintjob, I'm screwed. So I just went and bought, I don't know if it's a newer book. I guess it came out last year, but it's literally called Reptiles of the Transpecos. Have you seen that?
Oh, no, I haven't.
I just ordered it from Eco. So that should be here this week. So,
Christian, I have some of those hats in stock. I don't think I have the black ones, but I have the gray and white ones. But I have to see what I have. I don't know if I have any more snapbacks or if they're all the small, medium flex fits, which are made for toddlers.
I also was going to tell you off air, but we'll do it now since we're talking about hats. You got to make your boy a khaki Subak one, please and thank you. So if
I can do it,
if I can get it before Daytona, that would make me very happy. Or if you could get it, if I can get it at Daytona, then great. If not, whatever.
Would it just say Subak or would it say Subocularis?
Oh no, just say Subak.
Or Bogey.
I think Bogey might throw
you play golf?
Yeah, or it's like some air traffic control thing or fighter jet thing. I don't know. But yeah, if you did you and I were talking about doing like the H, right? Like the H bar here, and then just Subak on top. I thought that'd be cool.
Oh, Jeff says he has a copy of that book. Yeah.
Nice.
Chris asked, was I talking about an Atheris book? Yeah, last week we were. So in order to get that, what's the guy's name? Johann Schmidt, I think is how you pronounce it. So there's a guy over in, I think he's German or Austrian, maybe both.
I think it's German.
He wrote it, and it's over in Europe, but it's in English. If you, I'll send you the link because you can buy it from him, and he'll ship it from Germany, and it's not actually terribly expensive in the grand scheme of books. It's really not that bad, and it's 100% worth every penny. It's such an awesome book.
Nice.
I won't wax poetic about it because I did that last week for I feel like half the episode, but yeah, I'll hunt down the link and send it to you.
Yeah,
it's really good.
And Jeff, real quick, is that Transpecos book good? I assume it is. It looks quite comprehensive. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't go crazy in depth, but it's basically all reptiles of the Transpecos. So pretty sure it's got a Coleonyx in the cover. So can't be bad if it's got a Coleonyx in the cover, So, and I'm going full-fledged Transpecos, baby, because the goal is Alterna and Subox at Daytona, but I'm probably going to pick up Transpecos Copperheads tomorrow.
Yeah, but you know what you're missing.
What?
From the whole lot.
Bear dye.
Bears.
Bear dye. Maybe.
I'm gonna sit here and talk about Alterna and Subox. You ain't even gonna mention bears one bit.
Well, see, like I don't want to go too crazy on rat snakes. I mean, I got corns, I got glades, I got one yellow that I'm debating pawning off on Jake.
Do it.
Yeah,
Get a
it's.
bear.
I kept that yellow to see what it turned into, and if it was a girl, I was just gonna give it. If it was a yellow girl, I was just gonna give it to Billy, and if it turned out to be a glades, I was gonna keep it. And it's just getting yellower and yellower, and I'm pretty sure it's a boy, so I'm probably just gonna give it to Jake. Thing's meaner than sin. I mean, it's still only eating pinkies, but still.
Adam asked if bear dye care is exact same as corns. Yeah, I'd probably say keep them a little drier, which basically equates to using a smaller water bowl. They're also odd in the fact that they're almost like popwind carpets in that they spend an unusual amount of time in their water bowl. I've had some like adults that it's like every time I open the tub, they're chilling in the water bowl. There's nothing wrong. They're not too hot. There's no mites. There's none. They're a species that likes to just hang out in their bowl,
Yeah.
which you would not expect from a arid desert. I don't. Would you consider that arid?
What, the Transpecos?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like in comparison to like where the Cerastes and stuff comes from, though.
Yeah, but so I would consider Transpecos most definitely desert, but desert has so many different genres within it. I would say it's mostly arid desert with montane ecosystems and scattered steppe land. I think steppe land is a really good thing because you got like legit high temperature, high altitude desert mountain ranges like the Davis, right? But at the same time, in between the lowlands, it's all prairie, and steppe land. It's where the desert meets the forest, so to speak. So, yeah.
Yeah. And as far as like one of the main differences I've noticed between Bairds and other Pantherophis for that matter, not necessarily just corns, is they don't seem to take well to large meals. Adults can handle things a little better, but babies, like, they're a little more delicate, not saying it in a way to like scare anybody away from bear eye babies, but it's just one of those things where it's like you really can't push them like you can a corn. And I've learned that many times over the last couple of years of having them. If they regurge, like, drop everything, leave them be, don't feed them again for like a month, and then start really small and work them back up. They just don't seem to bounce back from that as well as like corns and some other Pantherophis do. But other than that, I mean, yeah, the care is pretty much the same. Mine are pretty much everything in my room is kept ambient at this point, minus the Ackies. So everything's in the daytime right now, getting into probably the low to mid 80s, and then having a decent night drop. And lately, I've actually been leaving the fan on in my room, not on like the medium setting, not the high or anything like that, just to keep air circulating and stuff like that. And everything does fine. Everything digests fine. I don't have any problems. So it's just babies seem to be a little more delicate with feeding and feeding larger meals. So
Would you say the same thing about Transpecos?
yeah.
I found that out the hard way.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it's a desert thing, and maybe it's something that's also in line with like rosy boas and them, not keeping water bowls in with them. With the Transpecos, I definitely like. I think with those even more so than the Bairds, Transpecos, the water bowl definitely needs to be on the smaller side rather than the larger. And then ventilation is really, really important. They need a lot of airflow. They don't take to stagnant air well. I don't think at all. I never had any issues with mine. But again, like a smaller than normal water bowl is what I would typically offer. Which I guess to put that into context, so like a 32 quart tub would have like one of the standard, I don't know, 5-inch deli cups, 6-inch deli cups maybe. That's about yay tall or whatever, and that was fine. So, yeah, it's those desert species, man. I think they're just, I don't know. Like the more I see that kind of stuff, the more I'm convinced that whole sort of things that are adapted to that biome just seem to do better on smaller meals and not large meals. You know, just the opposite interval where you're doing smaller stuff a little more often, like I would do with the rhinos, where I'm not feeding them. You know, I don't even feed the adult rhinos like adult mice. Really, I feed them smaller stuff, and I just feed them multiples of it. And it's the same approach I take with those that I do with the subocs and the beards and stuff.
Well, Jeff, thank you, by the way. And I was going to say the same thing with like my subocs. I've only got one left because I've had a lot of learning to do and stuff that was told to me, oh, just do this. And that did not work well at all. Right now I've got the one in a 19 quart, and he's been in there, well over a year, probably almost 2 years. And he's at the point now where he probably could go into something bigger, but he really doesn't need to. But when I started off with him, as well as my other ones, I use the PSU ceramic ones because they're cheap and they're white. You can see if there's dirt, they're durable. And I've dropped them on tile and on concrete, and I've had like one chip ever. But anyway, I started off with the big like 6 inchers, and it just the entire enclosure, the tub was just fogged out, and I was like, this is not going to work.
Yeah,
and then
bad.
I went up switching to I guess it's like 1.5 inches or almost 2 inches, and that worked phenomenally because it didn't raise the humidity enough. But again, I had lots of ventilation, tons of air holes. But the only thing is, though, because it's an arid species, that little tiny 1 inch, 1.5 inch bowl, it dries up like that.
Yeah.
So I just upgraded him to a 3-inch bowl, and I'm basically letting it dry out, wait a day or two, and then fill it back up. So
I think the substrate you use too makes a big difference.
Oh yeah.
You know, I keep a lot of my stuff. The Wild Rose Pass that I had before they went to Gillen, I kept those on aspen. Which if you've got something that has a lot of ventilation in it, that those water bowls, it zaps all that moisture. Like those water bowls will be dry in no time. Because that's the issue I have right now. I have some of those critter keepers, like not the tall ones, but like the longer, flatter ones.
Sure.
And I've got 3 or 4 corns in some of those, and those water bowls are the ones that always dry out before. Like it's almost like I just refilled it. Like where did this all go? And it's the combination of that fan running and circulating air on top of that, that substrate, which is aspen or pine, sucking it all out, and before you know it, everything's just basically a sponge outside of that bowl. So it's interesting to see that I don't have that issue in some of the racks and the Cambro tubs and some of these other setups, but in those in particular where they might as well be wide open on the top. There's so much ventilation with those, and I do love those critter keepers. I'm not gonna lie, like those things are great, especially for stuff like that. But
do you have the Critter Keeper brand, or do you have the nice thicker Exoterra ones?
One of them I think is an Exoterra one. The other 3 are Critter Keeper.
Yeah, dude, I love keeping, like, I've only kept sand vipers in them, but I love keeping sand vipers.
Dude, they're perfect for that because ventilation, man.
Dude, it's literally like
it's the closest thing to like a screen cage for chameleons that you can get for snakes without it
exactly
being a screen cage.
Exactly. And honestly, that's a great analogy too, because a screen cage, if a snake rubs in a screen cage, it's going to eat its face up. If the snake rubs on this, it's no different than it was just rubbing on a rock in the enclosure. Like it doesn't have the same effect as wire mesh, And I put a piece of packing tape on, the two little doors on the sides, like the feeding doors.
Yeah.
I just put a piece of tape on those, packing tape on those, like clear packing tape. And I never open them, so they're always sealed shut. And then the lid on top, it's not just a click down lid with those stupid little tabs that snap. It literally is a slider. So you have to, for those watching this, you have to slide it back, and then it has a little lip that I can grab with hemostats, so I don't have to put my hands there, and I can actually lift the door open. And dude, it works like $1 million. Can't speak high enough about them.
Yeah, they're definitely old school, but damn it if they don't work, man.
For sure. And those Exoterra ones, that plastic is so dense and so much more rigid. There's
rounded corners.
Yeah, there's no flex to it. Yeah. Oh, that's right. I didn't even think it has a rounded corners, man. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's what I've been using to grow out some like 2-year-old corns that are now. I got a couple of them that are getting to the point to where they can be upgraded to like a 32 quart, but
Yeah.
Kind of taking my time.
Yeah, man. The beauty of corns.
That's right. Yeah, I gotta go through and move some stuff. I'm like officially for the first time in a very long time, like overwhelmed overall with everything going on. Like not just snakes, but like work on top of snakes, on top of podcast stuff, on top of Fulvia stuff. It's just gotten ooh. Is that the wild caught one, the Miami?
No, this is Abbott.
Oh. Like, I love it when they do that. That like, oh, what was that? I touched a hair. Oh my god, what is it?
I'm literally not even squeezing. Like he's holding me. But dude, look at that belly.
Yeah.
And then that sides. I never get to do show and tell because I'm never in the snake room. But
I get tempted to do it some weeks, but then I'm like, then I got to move all the gear and stuff in there, and I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
Pass. Investigating.
Oh, now he's holding on to the wire microphone. Crap. Come on, let go.
How many corns are in existence in the hobby worldwide? It's got to be like 100,000 plus. Oh, I'd venture to say it's got to be at least, I would think, 7 figures between Europe and Asia and the US. Without a doubt. Mike said,
Okay.
if only China would post their numbers, seems like a lot are going there this season. Yeah.
Yeah, most likely. Still enough for us, though.
That's right. No shortage.
Yeah.
So this week, sort of shifting gears a little bit, we hear about, or not necessarily hear about, but we see these names attached to taxonomy and different species, but I feel like it's things you see, but you don't really know the backstory on the individuals behind them. So I told Phil it'd be cool to kind of do like a regular thing where we talk about certain figures in early herpetology and names that you're likely to see attached to certain species and things. And so, for example, I think this week we're going to talk about Sir, I don't know if you would pronounce it Boulenger or Boulenger. Look at that little guy.
I always thought it was Boulenger.
George Albert Boulenger. Send it to me. Is that mine?
That's yours.
Yeah. So Boulenger might sound familiar because rhino rat snakes or Rhynchophis boulengeri. There's a handful of other species that have been named after the guy. Normally, if you look at taxonomy of certain species, his name actually pops up with synonyms, prior taxonomic nomenclature of species before it gets revised and somebody else comes in and changes it. So this guy's name is on a lot of stuff. So I did some reading, and I actually have a page pulled up here that I will read.
Please do.
You fellas know of any cigar rollers that use domestic tobacco from the mid-Atlantic? We grow tobacco for early Tidewater, Maryland education at my job. Makes me curious. No, a lot of U.S. tobacco is used for cigarettes and dip. You don't see a lot of cigar tobacco coming from the States. If you do, it's usually like Connecticut River Valley stuff. And then Florida now has some Florida grown tobacco for Florida cigars, and they charge a lot of money for it.
Oh yeah, taking advantage of that sun-grown action.
That's right. So George Albert Boulenger was born in October 19th, 1858. He died November 23rd, 1937. Was a Belgian-British zoologist who described and gave scientific names to over 2,000 new animal species, chiefly fish, reptiles, and amphibians. Boulenger was also an active botanist during the last 30 years of his life, especially in the study of roses.
Interesting.
Let's see. He was born in Brussels, the only son of Gustave Boulenger, a Belgian public notary, and Juliette Perriart of Valenciennes. I don't know. He graduated in 1876 from the Free University of Brussels with a degree in natural sciences and worked for a while at the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences in Brussels as an assistant naturalist studying amphibians, reptiles, and fish. He also made frequent visits during this time to the Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle in Paris and the British Museum in London. In 1880, he was invited to work at the Natural History Museum, then a department of the British Museum, by Dr. Albert C.L.G. Gunther, assigned to the task of cataloging the amphibians in the collection. His position in the British Museum meant that he had to be a civil servant of the British Empire, so became a naturalized British subject. In 1882, he became a first-class assistant in the Department of Zoology and remained in that position until his retirement in 1920.
Could you imagine, like, being hired by Albert Gunther?
You're my guy.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Sorry, go on.
After his retirement from the British Museum, he studied roses and published 34 papers on botanical subjects and 2 volumes on the roses of Europe. He died in Saint Malo, France. According to biographical accounts, he was incredibly methodical and had an amazing memory that enabled him to remember every specimen and scientific name he ever saw. He also had extraordinary powers of writing, seldom made a second draft of anything he wrote, and his manuscripts showed but few corrections before going to the publisher.
Wow.
Boulenger also played the violin, could speak French, German, and English, apart from reading Spanish, Italian, and a bit of Russian. As a zoologist, he also had a working knowledge of both Greek and Latin. By 1921, he had published 875 papers totaling more than 5,000 pages, as well as 19 monographs on fish, amphibians, and reptiles. The list of his publications and its index of species covers 77 printed pages. He described 1,096 species of fish, 556 species of amphibian, and 872 species of reptiles. He was famous for his monographs on amphibians, lizards, and other reptiles, and fish, for example, his monographs on the fish of Africa. He was a member of the American Society of Ichthyologists and Herpetologists and was elected its first honorary member in 1935. In 1937, Belgium conferred him on the Order of Leopold, the highest honor awarded to a civilian.
Wow. That's incredible.
His son, Edward George Boulenger, born 1988, passed away in 1946, was also a zoologist and held the post of director of the London Zoo Aquarium.
That's awesome, man. Incredible history.
In 1897, King Leopold II of Belgium started to recruit naturalists to help create the Congo Museum. Boulenger was named chairman of this commission. Wow. His main discovery in 1921 was a strange fish from the Congo. It was eyeless and lacked pigmentation. He recognized it as new and unrelated to any extant epigean species of Africa. He wrote a brief paper describing this species of cave fish, the first ever described from Africa. He called it Sacobarbus geertzii, honoring a mysterious person, M. Geertz, who provided him with the specimen. Today it is known as the Congo or African blind barb.
Wow. That's so cool, man.
So there's a handful of, there's 26 reptile species recognized today bear his name.
Wow.
Agama boulengeri, Anolis boulengerianus, Atractaspis boulengeri.
Oh, yeah.
Atractus boulengeri, centipede snake.
Mm-hmm.
Brachymeles boulengeri. Trying to see something that people would probably recognize. Elapsoideae boulengeri, it's Boulenger's garter snake.
Yeah.
Did a lot of African stuff, which I think was cool.
Gonyosoma
boulengeri, rhino rats. Let's see. Rhamphalion boulengeri, Boulenger's pygmy chameleon. Trachyboa boulengeri, which is the northern eyelash boa, which I think is really cool. In the above list, a binomial authority in parentheses indicates that the species was originally described in a genus other than the genus to which it's currently assigned. The water cobra genus Boulengerina was named for G.A. Boulenger, but is now treated as a subgenre of Naya, containing 4 species. Annulata Christii.
Wow, they're already up to 4?
I guess so.
That's nuts, man.
And then there's a couple fish named after him, and
yeah.
So you see the name a lot. The guy was busy.
Yeah. Very awesome stuff, man.
Let's see some pictures. Let me pull some up. So I mean, yeah, like there's him, there's Schlegel, Cope is another one that you see a lot. We could just periodically, once a month, twice a month, talk about George Albert Boulenger. He looks like a man who takes this shit seriously. JT, your wife says hello.
What's up, Mike Stefani? We see you lurking. Yeah, man. The guy's distinguished as hell.
Let's see. I need to do the... Let me see. How old was he when he... How long did he live?
What, you said he died in 37? 1937?
1858 to 1937.
Yeah. Very cool, man.
He was 79.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty damn good run for that time period, man.
Not just 79, but 79 traveling colonial Africa and Europe, going through a world war.
Yep.
Absolutely incredible. And making it stateside too. That's awesome. It really makes you wonder if, when you have someone like him who could read and write multiple languages, who had a comprehensive knowledge of ancient Greek and Latin, who could speak 4 or 5 languages,
right?
Is it because guys like him were cut from a different cloth, or is it because we as the modern era have television and movies and multiple forms of literature, not just books, that our mental capacity is like, for example, can he speak 5 languages and I can't, but I know how to operate all the electronics in my life? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. His son only lived to 58.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting. Wonder if he was in the war.
I think he's probably too old.
Yeah, no, by that point you're right.
Yeah. What he would have been in his, well, he would have been in his 50s.
Yeah.
So I'm sure a man of his status probably didn't have to participate.
They said, you can't go, we need you for science.
Yeah.
But just imagine, man, like being, I think of rhino rats in particular when I see this name, for obvious reasons, like going to China or Vietnam and seeing a rhino rat for the first time and not having a clue as to what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's wild. You know, we talked about it in the past too about you know, the colonists and stuff when they first get here, like seeing coral snakes for the first time.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. Like someone had to be the first one to grab that thing and be like, let's see what this is all about.
Oh yeah.
You know? But I would imagine at that point, having been so many places, whether he went to China and Africa, you know, which came first, who knows? But like, that's a lesson I would imagine you only have to really learn once and have probably watch somebody else do it.
Yeah.
Before you're like, wait, we've never seen these before. Let's not touch them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what a fine chop, Billy Jenkins.
Yeah,
said.
man. Super cool, man. Super cool. Man,
I need you to send me. So I have a couple of names written down, but I need you to send me some that you think of, or if you're reading a book and you notice some, like, help your boy out.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm forgetting some. Normally I can rattle
course.
off a couple that I'm thinking off the top of my head, but I'm drawing a blank. Just you know, even that Atheris book, going back to that, you know, the author of that did a really good job of talking about the history of the taxonomy with the different species and how one person would find not specifically mentioned, but for example, like broadly eye. So Atheris broadly eye, but then another person would come and find the same snake, not knowing the other person had found it. And so they'd list it as something else. But then at some point that information would come together and they'd be like, okay, here's what I found. Here's what you found. This is what we can settle on. Just not having, I mean, it's such a hard concept for us to wrap our heads around now because it's like the lack of technology. If you wanted to see holotypes and get this information, you had to go to the museums and you had to find those specimens and do it. Like, it's just amazing that we were even able to be that organized. You know what I mean? To where we could be like, wait, someone's already seen this. You know, and of course, this is probably a several years long process. It's not like now where, you know, you can hop on a plane tomorrow and be in another country, you know, in 16, 24 hours, 48 hours. You know, then it was like you're having to go from one country to another just to go to those museums and see these things and then find out someone else has already sort of looked at that species and done their homework on it.
For sure. I'm trying to look in my notes right now, but I'm pretty sure it was
Brongersma. Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh yeah, Brongersma.
Going on the list.
Nice. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I know Boulenger renamed Nephrus levis to Nephrus platyurus, and then Glenn Milton Storr brought back and made the subspecies, you know, Levis, Pilvarensis, all that, because that's another one. Glenn Milton Storr, man. Wow, what I would have done to have met him before he passed. I think it might have been maybe Asper. So one of the East Coast knobtails was described, I think it was Asper, was described by Arthur Gunther, 1876, as, I believe, as Asper, and, or no, I'm sorry, I think it was as Levis, and it was off of a photograph in the mail in post, a handwritten, it's not a photograph, there was no photographs back then, excuse me, but, well, there was, but I digress. A hand-drawn illustration of what we would now know as Levis that was mailed to him and said that it was from, I guess, Western Australia or like out of Perth or something, but that's actually where the post came from. So he wrote this whole description of this new gecko. And then the one they sent him in as specimen was actually Asper from Queensland. So then he wrote the whole thing on this specimen, which clearly did not look like the illustration he was first sent. And then the original, I'm pretty sure the original document that he wrote, the original description was Asper, but out of Perth. And obviously Asper don't come from Perth or something to that extent. But it just goes to show you that he never saw the animal in the wild. It was just given to him across the ocean on boat that took weeks, if not months, to get to him. And like now I take a picture with my smartphone that I keep in my pocket, and within the blink of an eye, it's, to my friend in Japan or whatever. So wild. Sorry I butchered that story and drug it out so long. But
let's see. Kids Encyclopedia, George Albert Boulenger. That's the same thing that was on Wikipedia. Ain't nothing new here.
Yeah, Mike Stefani says that Enteresia perthenensis is not found in Perth. So there you go.
So I don't know. I hope people find that interesting. Again, that's something that we see these names and things a lot, but we very, very rarely, unless we go and search for it, know sort of the story of these individuals. And it's like after reading that Athras book and seeing the amount of work and stuff that it takes, especially when you're considering some of these species that are just buried in their range, like almost you can't even get to them. They're so removed from any easy travel or anything like that. It's pretty incredible that people were able to even do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually, as much as Wikipedia can be misleading or false information because it's Wikipedia, I still love going down the name rabbit hole.
Ooh.
Excuse me. So you go and you look at Boulenger, right? And you're reading about him, and it maybe references Albert Gunther, right? Because I'm a huge fan of Albert Gunther. And then I go down, I click his link, and now I go down his page. And then it's somehow whatever, it goes to an article about Glenn Milton Storr, right? And now you're looking at Storr, and you're looking at all his animals and all his discoveries. Because Storr wasn't even he was a herpetologist towards the end, but he was an ecologist. So it was, ecology as a whole. And then you go down rabbit holes about all these different science directions, and Wikipedia just becomes this spider web of links, and it just feeds you and feeds you and feeds you, and I can't get enough of that shit.
So I guess we'll do another one real quick. How about that?
Yeah, let's rock and roll.
Spencer Fullerton Baird.
Hey,
he's another one that I looked up a while back. He's
there
an American naturalist, ornithologist, ichthyologist, herpetologist, and museum curator.
Nice.
Born February 3rd, 1823. Lived until August 19th, 1887. So Daytona just got a little more special because that's when we lost the great. In Baird we trust.
Say those dates one more time for me.
February 3rd, 1823, August 19th, 1887.
1887. Wow.
1823. So he lived until he was 64. Baird was the first curator to be named at the Smithsonian Institution. He eventually served as assistant secretary of the Smithsonian from 1850 to 1878, and as secretary from 1878 until 1887. He was dedicated to expanding the natural history collections of the Smithsonian, which he increased from 6,000 specimens in 1850 to over 2 million by the time of his death.
Wow.
He published over 1,000 works during his lifetime. He was born in Reading, Pennsylvania in 1823. His mother was a member of the prominent Philadelphia Biddle family. Don't know what that means. He was a nephew of Speaker of the Pennsylvania Senate Charles B. Penrose, and the first cousin, once removed, of U.S. Senator Boies Penrose, Boies.
Okay.
That's weird. He became a self-trained naturalist as a young man, learning about the field from his brother William, who was a birder, and the likes of John James Audubon, who instructed Baird on how to draw scientific illustrations of birds.
Very cool.
His father was also a big influence on Baird's interest in nature, taking Baird on walks, gardening with him. He died of cholera when Baird was 10 years old.
Damn.
As a young boy, he attended Nottingham Academy in Port Deposit, Maryland, and public school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. He attended Dickinson College, earned a bachelor's and master's degrees, finishing the former in 1840. After graduation, he moved to New York City with an interest in studying medicine. He returned to Carlisle 2 years later. He taught natural history at Dickinson starting in 1845. While at Dickinson, he did research, participated in collecting trips, did specimen exchanges with other naturalists, and traveled frequently. Let's see. He was awarded a grant in 1848 from the Smithsonian Institution to explore bone caves and the natural history of southeastern Pennsylvania. In 1849, he was given $75 by the Smithsonian Institution to collect, pack, and transport specimens for them. It was during this time that he met Smithsonian Secretary Joseph Henry. The two became close friends and colleagues. Throughout the 1840s, Baird traveled extensively throughout the Northeast and Central United States, often traveling by foot. Baird hiked more than 2,100 miles in 1842 alone.
Wow. Wow. Savage.
Let's see. In 1850, he became the first curator at the Smithsonian Institution and the permanent secretary for the American Association for the Advancement of Science. The latter, which he served for 3 years. Upon his arrival in Washington, he brought 2 railroad boxcars worth of his personal collection. Baird created a museum program for the Smithsonian, requesting that the organization focus on natural history in the United States. His program also allowed him to create a network of collectors through an exchange system. He asked that members of the Army and Navy collect rare animals and plant specimens from the west of the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico. In order to balance the collection, Baird sent duplicate specimens to other museums around the country, often exchanging the duplicates for specimens the Smithsonian needed.
Brilliant.
During the 1850s, he described over 50 new species of reptiles, some by himself and others with his student Charles Frederick Girard. Their 1853 catalog of the Smithsonian Snake Collection is a benchmark work in North American herpetology. Baird also was a mentor to herpetologist Robert Kennicott, who died prematurely, at which point Baird left the field of herpetology to focus on larger projects.
Wow. So now, who described Baird's rats?
We're getting there. So he died on August 19th, 1887. Upon Baird's death, the Art and Industries building was draped with a mourning cloth. He was buried at Oak Hill Cemetery. Don't know where that is. Baird sparrow, a migratory bird native to Canada, Mexico, and the United States, is named after him. A medium-sized shore bird known as Baird sandpiper is also named after him. Baird Auditorium in the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History is named in his honor. Is located in the National Mall side of the first floor of the museum. His wife, Mary, donated his stamp collection to the National Museum. His papers are held in the Smithsonian Institution archives.
Wow.
Let's see. Good Lord, he's got a lot of stuff named after him.
Yeah.
Crabs, lobsters, Baird's rat snake, Baird's patch nose snake.
Baird's donuts.
Yeah. He has a tapir named after him.
Really?
Yeah. Baird's pocket gopher, Baird's beaked whale, mottled sculpin.
Very cool.
A genus of drumfishes was named after him.
Well, let's be real here. You got to go to the snake page. Find out who first described
That's
the
what
Baird's
I'm.
rat.
Let me see if I can pull it up here. Some has been considered a subspecies of Obsoletus, which it's not, to which it is closely related, often been replaced. It doesn't say.
If you go to
So it has someone named Yarrow next to that.
yeah, but that's gonna be the most recent
That was
revision.
1860.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know.
Let me see. I have it sucks. All my books are packed, man. It sucks. Hold on.
Huh.
All right, so I have the synonyms. So yeah, it looks like it was Yarrow in 1880, and it was Coluber Bairdi. And then Downing in 1952 made it Elafe obsoleta Bairdi. Then Contant and Collins in 1991 just put it as Elafe Bairdi,
Full
and
species.
then it just went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and
Yeah.
now we're at the more recent Pentherophis. So that's
Tyson
cool.
Dallas said Baird's pocket gopher is the preferred diet of the Louisiana pine snake.
Really
Look at that.
interesting.
Lisa said she loved that movie Master and Commander. She just wished it was more about the doctor/naturalist character.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
That would be cool if they did a movie, and I'm sure they've done one about like Darwin or something, but something that just like really showed the grimness of that whole lifestyle. And
Yeah.
like that was hard living, dude. We have it so easy now. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Air conditioning. Oof. Imagine
That's
having
something
to
I think about
sail.
all the time. Like you think about all the layers and stuff they wore back then.
Well, I know the climate was a lot cooler, but still, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but even then, like I have a hard time believing that summers weren't still brutal. And it's like you don't have AC. I think a lot of them actually, the architecture was built in a way that like cross breezes
Oh,
were
I'm
kind
sure.
of used. But like you think about like, colonials, like the giant dresses that women were wearing and the
Oh, yeah.
freaking 5 layers of suits that the dudes were wearing and just
Yeah. Wild.
insane.
Wild.
But I don't know. It would be cool if there was a book that sort of put together the original sort of fathers of herpetology.
Looks
The
like you have an
smells.
idea there. Looks like you have an idea there.
Yeah, but that's something like Michael Berger did such a good job on the Dragon Traders. I feel like that would be something that would be right up his alley.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
I wonder if there's like he has like if any of them have like great grandchildren that are doing the same thing.
Who knows, man? Who knows?
Because you think about like mid 1900s, that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
It's not that far removed from now. And they only bathed on Saturday. Oh, horrible.
Yeah. Sharing bathtubs, sharing bathtub water. Ugh.
And we wonder why everyone got cholera and syphilis and all that other stuff.
Oh, Jesus. And then imagine being the person who had to scrub the tub out after 10 people used it that day. Blech.
Or being the last guy that has to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. And still paying full price.
You ain't getting clean, man.
Ugh. God.
I'd rather wait another week, I think, and somehow manage to get first in line.
Well, just find a creek or a river or something. Bring a bar of soap like pioneers. Oof.
Pass.
But yeah, I think this is a good segment. I think it's good fun, and hopefully our listeners and or viewers can do some Googling on their own and go down some rabbit holes. You know,
That's right.
founding fathers of herpetoculture.
I lose power for an hour and I want to kill.
Comment section's on fire.
That's why they had their hoop and stick
Yeah, right?
and other stupid ass toys.
Yeah. Oh, man. I always wanted to learn how to play the fife, though. I think it'd be cool as hell.
All the time, Fife.
Yeah, right?
You're on point, Tip. All the time, Fife. How many Chlorechus you got right now?
2.
Are they both little tiny guys?
No, one's probably what we would normally consider a yearling, but it's probably 2 or 3 years old if I had to guess. And then the other one's probably about a year old. I mean, I got it when it was, days old. I'm pretty sure I gave it its first meal, which is the one that was on Instagram Live. So that's the one that's in that deli cup I just showed you. And dude, that thing is coloring up like
slow?
crazy.
Those and squams in general are, those pretty slow growers.
Yeah, I think they're slow growers, but I also feed them big meals less often. I do like probably not what I'm supposed to. Like realistically, that little baby I showed you should probably have like maybe a pinky head every 4 or 5 days. I give it a whole pinky once every other week. Cause like I fed it on what's today? Today's Monday.
Yep.
Yeah. I fed her on Thursday night, and it still has a massive lump. And it's a pinky.
Should have cut it.
It was alive, dude.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, no, I give them live. So
don't be a freak. Don't cut live mice.
Yeah, don't cut live mice. So, in fact, I do have most of my baby stuff I give live just because it's easier. And then once they get to that yearling size, it's just muscle memory for them. And I just switch them out, And I won't lie, I give the Cerastes specifically live because they're just in sand. So, like, it doesn't matter how good I dry the prey item off from thawing, it's going to get
dusted.
Yeah, it's getting dusted. While as a live one, there's barely any. So, yep. But
that was something the book emphasized a lot was, with Chlorechus in particular and a lot of the other species is that, the feeding schedule for Atheris needs to be pretty sparing because they can get fat real easy.
Yeah.
They seem a lot like chondros in that regard. And it seems like Chlorechus in particular, from what I've heard from you and other people that have kept them, and that book is like, they're very sedentary.
Very.
Their book was talking about how you'd have adults that they won't move for days. Like they'll sit in the same spot and not move.
Dude, weeks. Legit.
Wow.
And what's funny is the baby really doesn't move that much. The other Chlorechus, dude, never moves. Like literally never moves. And I make sure that I put the prey item by the snake, because if I like left a frozen thaw to the other side of the enclosure, it would just never find it. Yeah. Like, why does it have to move? I spray it, it drinks off its body. The water bowl is below it. So if it wants to drink, it can just stretch down, still perched like a chondro, and drink if it wants to. And I spray it. And then at the same time, I put the prey item right below it, and I come back 5 minutes later, it's gone. So, yeah. They're fun, man. They're cute. And they're I was never a fan of Chlorechus because I'm not a big green snake guy, but these two are definitely growing on me. I'm glad I kept 2 of them.
Those babies come out the same size as squams?
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
Yeah. I also think unlike squams, this is purely anecdotal. I feel like Chlorecus get so much bigger than squams that a bigger female Chlorecus will drop bigger babies for sure. Because like the last shipment that I got in, how many did I have? I had like 16 of them, and dude, some of the adults were freaking huge, like the
Really?
biggest Atheros I've ever seen. Oh, like a solid 15 inches. Diesel.
It always cracks me up. We're like, man, that's a big ass Atheros. It's like, how long was it? 14 inches.
But dude, think about it though. I mean, the thing's probably almost 2 inches in diameter and 15 inches long.
Yeah, no, I mean that's
Yeah.
and the freaking head that Chlorecus especially have on them,
Yeah.
man. It's like
Yeah, it's
there's
like a
no
rugby
wonder that
ball.
those things pack a hell of a punch.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So
I also find it very interesting though that those in squams seem to do really well as far as like imports adjusting to captivity when there's so many other species that in that genus that don't.
yeah.
It's odd.
I think it's also that Chlorecus and Squamangera are that much more tolerant, and we are not as accommodating as we should be. And yes,
In terms of
what's up, Scott? And yes, I agree that they probably have both their own species complexes. What were we saying, Smitty?
you were saying, like tolerances.
Yeah. So if you take
In regards to like what we're feeding them, or what are you like?
No, just general husbandry. So like if you take a squam, which is, and again, this is purely anecdotal, and I'm not condoning the mistreatment of animals. But if you took a squam and you stuck it on paper towels with a stick and a water bowl, it would be perfectly fine at room temperature and live its whole life happy and just eat what's in front of it because it's a squam and it doesn't care. But something like a ceratophora, no, there's got to be airflow. There has to be a humidity gradient. You have to have a higher dew point in the morning that gradually tapers to an afternoon high dry heat, and then slowly as night falls, the temperature drops, and then come 2-3 in the morning, the dew point hits 76 degrees Fahrenheit, and by morning everything is covered in a thin layer of moisture. Like you need fans to pull from the top of the enclosure and exit out the front or exit out the sides and the bottom. Like there needs to be a more of a dynamic, and squams, they just don't care.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're just like,
well, I mean, I think you can look at the ranges of Chlorecus and squams in particular, and
right.
that can tell you a lot. It's like you see the range of squams compared to every other species. And it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense as to why they would be able to fare pretty well in just about anything you give them, you know, because they're the most widespread species of that whole genus, you know. You know, assuming that it's a singular species and not split up. But yeah, the diet thing too, the book mentioned that a lot. A lot of those species in that genus are rodents are kind of a secondary diet thing. It's mostly lizards and frogs seem to be the bulk of a lot of them. So
yeah, and I do attribute my minute amount of Hispida success, the Hispida, the hairy bush viper, to the fact that I was feeding it tree frogs, but I was also keeping it as if I was keeping the tree frogs. So it had basically open top. There was no ventilation on the sides, so it stayed muggy in there and it retained that humidity. And my whole thought process was initially it wasn't for the snake. It was for if the snake didn't eat the frogs would survive perfectly fine in that enclosure. And hindsight, I feel like it did benefit the snake 1,000%, whether it's breathing in water vapor like chameleons or it just enjoyed being in that soupy pea soup thickness. It definitely kept the thing alive. I mean, I had the thing like 7-8 months, and then I got rid of it and I sold it. So,
what are your thoughts on using Exoterra versus, you know, Visions or BlackBox stuff in general?
It comes down to, for venomous, so Exoterra style, we'll call it Exoterra style, whether it be Zoomed or Zilla or Exoterra, whatever.
Right.
A screen top that is removable with cable lock management in the back, and then a door in the front that is front opening, whether it be a double door or a single door with some kind of substrate dam, ventilation on the bottom, and sealed for moisture, right? So there we go. We'll call it the Exo style. I think, first of all, they're very aesthetically pleasing, especially if you're doing tropical stuff. I also feel like there's no reason why you couldn't keep venomous in it, providing that you take the safety protocols and procedures into effect and you, excuse me, make it safer than it is. Because as it comes out of the box, it is not safe at all.
So what are you changing out of the box?
Well, first things out of the box is I have to, excuse me, I want to learn how the latch works in the front. So if the latch is a turnstile latch, I need to make sure that there is something keeping that latch tight so it's not turning, right? If it has a hole through it for like a little mini lock, I want something that I can put through there to prevent it from opening on its own or from that tension being weakened and fall. If the door has little locks on it, like the Zillas do, they come with these little pin stops. I'll put the pin stops in. And then what I did is I took twisty ties and I put twisty ties or zip ties onto the pin stops so I could use hemostats to grab the pin stop and lift the pin stop out without putting my hand on the enclosure. I also would have put extra mesh screening on the front ventilation holes because if it's something like an eyelash viper, I don't know how small those babies are going to come out. And I don't need little babies to be slithering through the ventilation holes. And then the same thing goes for the top screen. I make some kind of spacer, whether it be out of plastic or wood, where I've got a second layer of screening that's sitting on top of the existing screen that's at least 2 inches thick. So God forbid something gets out through the screen on top, it has another level of screen. And better yet, if somebody leans on the tank or I put my hand on there accidentally, nothing is going to bite through. Nothing that fits in that size enclosure is going to be able to bite through that 2-inch gap of screen. So little things like that to better safetyfy that exo style enclosure. I also have a problem with the double doors and the single doors that are very, very tall. They're the extreme arboreal ones. The lock's at the bottom. And if the snake pushes at the top, it can actually push the door open just enough on a hinge.
There's nothing. Yeah, it's got more give at the top than it does at the bottom.
Exactly. So you got to have some kind of, even if it's just painter's tape, blue painter's tape or masking tape. It's ugly, but it will keep those doors from opening. Something like that. And even still, I can fold the painter's tape over and make like a little handle. So again, like the pin stops, I can grab that tape with hemostats and peel it off with the hemostats, and I don't have to put my hand directly onto the glass.
I sent Iber the link. Prepare yourself.
I just noticed he was chiming in.
Yep.
There we go.
Hello.
Oh, look at the headphones.
Look at the headset.
Look at looks like he's
because every time I talk in the car, you guys are like, "What the hell's going on? I can't hear anything." And I was like, "Right, okay. Well, I'll put a headset on, and then you won't get the reverberation."
Yeah, look at him, Buck Rogers in the 21st century.
That's it. How are we, guys?
Looking like Maverick and Top Gun, boy.
It's good. We miss you.
Yeah, mate. It's been a while. I've been bloody busy. So this is what happens when I'm writing. So I just like disappear. So
you got to do what you got to do.
I have been listening. I just haven't been cracking on like everything. So how's things going anyway?
Cool, man. Good. Same old.
Hey,
is good news.
Right. Mate, the stuff that you're talking about, those Atheras, I reckon half the problem is that we keep them like we try and keep everything else.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we can't keep them like copperheads?
Yeah. See, this is the big fuck up, the big misnomer in the hobby, right? Is that people go, "Oh, this thing's hard to keep." It's not hard to keep. You just can't keep it like everything else.
Yeah.
Right? So what people have got to understand is that, 30 degrees, or what's that, 90, 92 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever, is not the magic figure for every single fucking species out there. Not everything wants 45% humidity and, wants food on Fridays and is happy to eat rodents. And so that's our starting point, it seems like, for just about everything when it first comes in, right? And so then people go, oh, well, actually, I maybe don't need to feed something else, or I need to try a different temperature, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And then the other thing that people do is they go, oh, well, I'll just look at what the temperature is in X. And what they forget is that there's huge temperature fluctuations in locations, right? So as an example, right, I'm in southeast Queensland. Where I'm in southeast Queensland, I'm in a cold, dry area in winter, right? But in summer, it becomes really hot. Now, 25 kilometres from the crow flies, we've got rainforest, right? It doesn't get as low in temperature, and it doesn't get as hot in temperature at any time compared to, so the swings aren't the same. The relative humidity is higher, and even though it's only 25 kilometres apart from each other on a map, there's a huge difference in the temperatures and the climatic conditions that those animals are exposed to.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got an animal that's been sitting there on the top of a hill, right, and it's being grabbed by somebody and thrown into a box, it sits in a box at the wrong temperature for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then eventually goes on a boat, and then, or a car or a plane or whatever, comes across to the US or to Europe, it's probably been sitting in a box for a month for the most part. Now, if it's been sitting in the box for the most part in adverse conditions, or conditions that are outside of its normal zone, that animal's fucked. You might be able to keep it alive for a little while, but it's essentially trashed. And that's why you have issues with some of these species getting through. Particularly now, where it's got to go from one country to another country that, in the case of some of those Atheris species, they don't export out of those countries anymore. And that's why you can't get them for the most part. They get smuggled from one border across one country in Africa to another one that allows the exportation for it to go out, and then eventually it goes out. But then the problem is those animals can't deal with that amount of downtime before they end up being looked after properly, I suppose. Would you agree with that, Phil?
Yeah, I would say it is better nowadays than it used to be, but you're spot on, man. You're absolutely spot on. I feel like the exporters know that the days of just shipping copious amounts of animals willy-nilly are over, and they have to, dare I say, not necessarily protect their investment, but they actually have to give a shit about it. So they're not necessarily just throwing it in a box anymore, but you're right. It goes from their half-ass enclosure, their bush enclosure, to a Swiss airline freighter, to a tarmac, to a tarmac, to a tarmac. It's gone up 30,000 feet in elevation and pressure change, and it's dehydrated. Its brain has been rattled from jet airline turbulence, right? And then now I put it in an Exoterra cage thinking, oh, it's all happy. It's not the case. You're right.
Yeah, and because the animals are so resilient, they look all right for a month. They're completely fucked on the inside, but they look okay for a month, and then they drop dead.
Yeah.
And the same thing too, right? We're seeing the evolution of the keeper out there. More people are learning better ways of keeping animals alive, and that way we're starting to see success in species that we weren't seeing success in before, right? At the same time, though, what's your metric for success? Is it keeping it alive? Is that success? Is being able to breed it success? There's a whole heap of different levels, and that's what I'm saying. There's what successful keeping is, and I think that's slowly changing as well. I think what people used to measure success on, we kept it alive, to people now keeping it to breed, and then getting second and third generation captive breedings are more or less class of success now, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean that was the approach I took with when I first got the Jansen. I was like, okay, first things first, keep it alive. Once we got that down pat, after a couple months, a year, whatever, it was like, okay, now I can start to focus more on like, what do I need to be doing to get eggs? And it was like,
Yeah.
hey, now that step is, how do I keep these eggs afloat? You know, are they good? Are they bad? Whatever. What am I doing wrong if they're bad? What parameters am I not meeting that might be causing this? Is it just the animal? Is it me? Is it a combination of both? Who knows? So it's like, it's that, it's definitely not a single A to B sort of trip.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of stops along the way, but it is focusing on that first stop and then going to the next, going to the next, going to the next.
For me, I regard success as being able to not only be able to breed it multiple times. Right.
Yeah.
So breeding it once, anyone can throw something together and luck out, and get something happening. But to me, you got to be able to reproduce it. And as long as you've bred them a couple of times, then you can probably say you're relatively successful with the species. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be successful with all of the phenotypes that sit within a species as well, or a subspecies. So, yeah, I suppose that it's just the cautioning of how do you deem success, and then the same thing is that, you know, how do you go about actually trying to tweak things to make it better, right? So the other question that keepers need to ask themselves is, okay, I can keep it like this. I know I can keep it alive like this. And I know I can do this. But should you as a keeper then start to tweak things and maybe experiment by putting the basking spot up a couple of degrees, making me go for a little bit longer and seeing if that has an impact on the animal and if that's actually better for the animal? Because if we sit there, and I think we do this as a risk of all keepers, we go, oh, this works. And then we don't want to change anything.
Right.
But we don't really know if we're doing a really good job at all. We think we're doing okay, but we never actually push the boundary a little bit and try and see if a slightly hotter temperature is better for the animal.
Yeah, their whole.
And so that's one thing that we're starting to try and do. We're trying to tweak things a little bit. And hey, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You can always go back to your safe zone, so to speak. But yeah, it's, I don't know. I've found that it's certainly different with certain species. That I found that I don't necessarily keep everything the same way that I used to these days because of that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Smitty would agree too. I think that there's a very much an old school mentality of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. While as the new school mentality is try and change it a little bit. And like Scott said, if it doesn't work, just go back to what you had, you know? And there is definitely a difference in the new school or the up and coming keepers where people from our generation per se would say things like, oh yeah, that thing dies really well because we tried to keep it like a ball python, or we tried to keep it like a squam, or we tried to keep it like a bearded dragon. It's like, no, it's not that they die well. It's that we didn't know what we were doing and we failed miserably, you know? So,
yeah. And that doesn't mean too that the people that were doing it were a bad keeper or anything like that.
Yeah,
it's just that they did the best what they could with what they knew at the time, right? And
sure.
You know, I don't know. I think that anyone that just keeps the same way that they've always kept and doesn't want to look to something new is shooting themselves in the foot.
For sure. For sure.
Oh, I mean, it's like what we mentioned earlier with the subox and stuff. Like the way we're going to keep subox is not going to be the same that we're going to keep corn snakes. Is it going to be similar in you know, more than one way? Absolutely, but there's definitely nuances in the way you unfortunately have to learn that sometimes, because the lesson repeats as necessary. Is, you know, you end up losing animals, and then you have to kind of look at it from a, you know, a top down or bottom up approach and sort of adjust from there and figure out again, you know, is it me?
Yeah.
Is it the animals I'm getting? Is it both? You know,
it's like everything though. You got to start somewhere, don't you? You know, and this,
Yep.
you know, you go, all right, okay, I'm going to start at this point, and now I'm going to tweak from here. You know, so yeah. How's things going over there anyway, guys? How's it all been?
It's good.
Seems like it's been ages since I've been on.
It has been a long time, brother. And just because we're on the topic, so
yeah,
I have gotten not I don't want to call it success, but I have gotten some success with the stiletto project to the point where now I had animals eating in front of me and then they just died. So
really?
it was not success.
Oh,
yeah.
Fuck.
So I went from 4 down to 1, and then I managed to get 3 more from a friend. And now these 3, the 4 that I have now are the best ones I've ever had. And I don't know if it's because the animals themselves are better specimens or it's because
Yeah.
I've learned so much. You know what I mean?
So what did you do wrong? Or what did you think you did wrong?
I think I was keeping them too cool. And I feel like when I got them to eat, I jump started the metabolism and I wasn't feeding them enough.
See, I wonder, right, with something like that, would it be better to have an enclosure that's like 2 feet deep, right?
Oh, for sure.
And bake the fuck out at the top of it.
Yeah.
Right?
My thoughts exactly.
And then basically have a thermal gradient that goes top down through the soil.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you'd manage that, right? That seems to be fucking hard to try and replicate in captivity.
And I also had what I believe to be some kind of ovulation. I mean, for lack of a better word, ovulation. I mean, I don't even know what to call it because it was a female that went into a really weird looking shed cycle and was doing this weird sideways Woma python inverted side belly thing. And I was thinking, man, I should just throw a male in there and see what happens. And I stopped myself because I was like, no, I know she does not have enough caloric intake to handle that at all. I just know she doesn't. And at the same time, what am I going to do if I hatch these things out?
New frontier, man.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? If I can keep these 4 going for the next year and she does that shit again, I'll do it. Fuck it.
Document everything
And
you
just
can.
right. And exactly.
Man, I've seen some fucking sickly looking animals that were gravid, eh?
Yeah. But
I've seen some sickly looking animals that were gravid, and
I don't think
I don't think they get a choice in the scrub.
Yeah, but I want to give her the best life possible. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that just yet. That's what I'm saying.
But is the best life possible the ones that you're dealing with then, or are the captive born babies that you're going to be working with?
That is very true. But then again, what the hell do you feed a neonate Actractaspis that is smaller than a cocktail straw?
No one knows.
No one knows. Exactly.
Has anyone tried? Has anyone tried breeding them?
No.
I reckon they'll be skink feeders.
I don't think
maybe centipedes. You know what? Maybe centipedes.
I was actually thinking centipedes and isopods, to be honest. But I don't think anyone's done it. I don't think anyone's done it on purpose. But I know that they've had wild caught specimens in Africa that dropped clutches, and the clutches hatched, and then they let the babies go. So,
this is too fucking hard. Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Give it a crack. I reckon you might be able to get them on a mouse parts.
I mean, dude, they're literally the size of, like, when they're born. I can't imagine how tiny they are. They've got to be like blind snake size. Yeah, it's got to be. And then I was thinking, well, shit, maybe I'll just feed them blind snakes.
I've hatched out blind snakes.
Well, not your blind snakes, the Bimini ones.
Brahminis. Yeah.
Brahminis,
I've hatched out blind snakes. We got a roadkill one.
Oh wow!
Because we're a carer, right? So we have people bring shit to us, and anyway, I got this heavily gravid blind snake that had been hit by a car, and I looked at it and I'm like, I'm going to cut the eggs out of it and see what happens. I cut the eggs out of it and hatch the eggs out. 36 days later, 11 of 11 eggs. Happy days. Out they came.
Excellent.
So we GPSed where the female had come from, the roadkill female, and then we took all the babies back and let them all go. So,
that's excellent.
They were bigger than I thought too. The babies were actually quite large.
Oh really? Like
so,
a third
but the female was 460 millimeters SVL, and the babies were about 80 mil total length.
Yeah, I was going to say 100. I imagine the eggs got larger as time went on too. You know.
Yeah, as the eggs did get larger, and they're a fairly heavily bodied species of blind snake too. These ones. So, but yeah, it was certainly cool. But the interesting thing was when the eggs came out, they didn't look like normal snake eggs. They were a bit more waxy looking, and I was like, oh, they might be fucking really rectangular. Hey,
Really?
it was really quite weird. Yeah, I'll send through some photos, and put them in the Snakes and Stogies chat. So people who are on the chat group, they'll get to see it. Other people, well, such a life. But if you know, you know. But yeah, they hatched out in 36 days.
Wow.
That was the other thing that like threw me. And yeah, 11 of 11 eggs hatched. So
and you said they were
cool.
more leathery?
Really waxy.
Waxy.
Almost like a slug.
Interesting.
You know when you first see a slug, right, and it's not bright. You know, sometimes you get those slugs that aren't bright yellow. They're the creamy looking slugs and waxy, and you know, and then you know, usually within 4 or 5 hours, though, they lose that waxiness to them, and they turn into a good-looking egg, right, like a good-looking reptile egg, if they're not a slug. Well, these things just stayed waxy all the way through.
Interesting.
Incubated them over water, hatched out 100% rate. So
it reminds me of the Cerastes that give birth to the almost fully developed egg. You know what I'm talking about? And they hatch like 3 weeks later, 30 days later.
The Diones are like that too.
Yeah.
What else? There's isn't there? Is Ovophus?
Ovophus. I think there's one Ovophus that does that.
Yeah, Monte
like
Carlo or something like that. I think
the eggs like
3 days. 3 days or something like that. Actus is like that as well, aren't they? They're like a really short. Short hatch rate on them as well.
It's that short. I think it's more like your blind snake. I think it's more like a month.
Yeah. Whereas you get other things that are like fucking 100 days.
Yeah.
But even then, right? That's another interesting thing, right? How often what temperature do you guys incubate at? And have you ever changed your incubation temperature?
I do, depending on the species.
Not on purpose. not
on
purpose. Not on purpose. Yeah, 80. I've always been 82 to 83.
Robert. Yeah, 82 to 83. What about you, Phil?
It depends on the species. So like chondro eggs are gonna get cooked a little hotter. But like the rhino rats and the goniosoma stuff, I've got those riding at 78, and then corns are gonna be somewhere in between the chondros and the rhinos, depending on what's in the incubator at the time. But I normally if it was just Baird's rats or corn eggs, then typically I'd keep them at like 80, 81.
Yeah. Well, so obviously I'm going to go back to Celsius because that's what I know. But with inland taipans, right? So I did the first clutch I ever bred of those. I incubated them at 31.5, right? And I got really good quality hatchlings and all the rest of it, and everything was fine. And then this next clutch I did them at 30, and the clutch after that I did 29.5. Now my incubation temperature for most lappers now is like 28.5.
I was literally going to say your sweet spot for East Coast is 28, right?
Yeah. So like 28 degrees for most of the stuff, 28 to 28.5, right? Yeah. And I'm finding now that it takes another 10 to 15 days on the end of the incubation. The babies that come out have got so much better hydration to them. They got better muscle tone. They seem to feed better, and they just seem to be more better adjusted. And so, but I've gone too far too. I tried 26, and 26 wasn't good. 26 wasn't too good at all. But then some of the colubrids that we do, we put them on the bench. We don't even put them in the incubator. Yeah. We just leave them on the bench. And the reptile room drops down anywhere. It goes up to about 26, 27 during the day, and drops down to low 20s at night. Right. Now, so the eggs are literally going through a temperature swing every night of 6 to 7 degrees, and they hatch out just fine.
That's what would happen outside, right?
Well, this is the thing. This is what blows people's minds, right? I'm like, they don't have a constant temperature outside. They're all sitting there and going up and down anyway. So, stuff that's laying in termite mounds and stuff like that's a little bit different. But
now, let me ask you this: have you ever? I've only heard of this. No one's ever confirmed or denied it. But on something like the Notechis, as the gestation period is getting longer and longer, do you increase the temperature in the enclosure, or because it's how it would happen in the wild in terms of like turning into summer?
It depends on when you put them together, right? So if you're putting them together in autumn and they're overwintering the babies, then yeah, you'll slowly increase. But if they've mated in spring, usually by the time that they're dropping, the temperature's popping out just fine. They might even be coming down on the cooler side at that point. But you just watch the animals; they'll bask for longer if they want.
That's a good point. I didn't even think of that.
They'll regulate themselves. So it also too depends on how you set your enclosures up too. Like my animals are in big enclosures, and so because they're in big enclosures, we've got areas of fairly significant heat that they've got access to pretty much at all times.
Yeah.
So if they want to go and shuttle on and sit at 40 degrees, they can. They're not going to stay at 40 degrees because the enclosure is big enough that I can have a pretty large hotspot in those enclosures. So I think that's one of the other issues is that we don't give animals enough choice.
Absolutely. And then,
but sorry, going back to those Atheris, right? I think one of the issues with those Atheris is that we're trying to keep animals in a cage, so to speak. We're trying to regulate stuff within an enclosure, which is too tight, too tough, right? You're better off trying to regulate the whole room. If you regulate the whole room, then you're probably going to have better success because then you can have things like fans in the room that forces air exchange through the room, but doesn't put a breeze on the animal. And I think that's one of the issues that you're seeing with some of those things is that if you've got a breeze that's directly on those animals, like if you go into a rainforest at night, they're not windy places. Rainforests aren't windy, right? Because the trees block all the wind. So they're still, but they've got good air exchange. So how do you get good air exchange? Well, by if you put a fan on an enclosure, right, you're now forcing air in and out of that enclosure, and you're basically forming a breeze. Those animals aren't used to having a breeze. Now, if you spray them and they've got a breeze on them, right, through convection, right, those animals will then get that condensate will then cause those animals to chill on the outside.
Yeah.
Now, it can chill down one night. That's not a problem. But chilling every night because it's now got a breeze going on that animal, and then suddenly now you just basically formed an evaporative air conditioner on the outside of your snake. And that's one of the issues that you have. So I think with some of that stuff is, you need good air exchange, and you need to have that nighttime misting, but you can't have a breeze going through those enclosures, so fans don't necessarily work.
Yeah, that's.
I think even if you had like a computer fan pulling air out, I feel like that would be that would get that job.
Just drawing air out is probably not so bad as long as you've got a big enough air intake so that the air is getting drawn in far enough. And where do you draw the air from? Do you draw it from above or do you draw it from below? Does that change it?
Yeah. Well, according to Dick Visser's Viper book, his sketches from like the 70s is drawing from the top down. And that way, if there is any residual moisture, it's going down to the substrate in the water bowl and then out the front of the enclosure. But again, it's species specific. He's talking about, Tremercerus, while as we're talking about something African that's totally different, but happens to be green in a tree.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff it's certainly interesting the way that Dick Visser set up those enclosures. But I think to be fair too, you look at those enclosures and that enclosure style, that would have been done in the late 90s, early 80s, late 90s sort of time is when Dick probably did those books, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at that now, how many of you guys are still keeping the same way that you kept in the 80s and 90s and 2000s?
Some stuff, but that's out of laziness, not out of proper husbandry.
See, I'd argue, right, that you don't keep the same. Right?
No, yes, I don't have the heat rock I had 20 years ago. You're correct.
Right, you don't keep the same way. What your level of comfort is around using various methods changes as you progress as a keeper. That's not to say that what Dick was doing is wrong at the time, but I don't think he would be doing that in the same way if he was still doing it today.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, yeah, ventilation, air exchange, the principles of drawing air through an enclosure, I think, are really important. I'm not necessarily sure you would achieve things in the same way, because there's different ways to do things. You can push air onto a wall, right? And then once you push air onto a wall, it can then dissipate. Now, if you push air onto a wall that's got projections on it, you will then basically act as a baffle, and it will change the way that the air moves around. And effectively, that's what you want to do. You want to have really soft air movement, but you still want to have good air movement through those enclosures. So you could potentially put something, if you want to keep the humidity in there and draw air through, you can put things like HEPA filters on and stuff like that, which would retain the moisture and stop the moisture from escaping, right? But would still allow ventilation exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, there's more than one way to skin that cat, so to speak. But mind you, I haven't seen too many HEPA filters in rainforest when I've been walking around.
That's very true. Well, they're there. They're just in the form of plants.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, the transpiration rate of plants is going to add to things as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think too, right? The muscle tone that those animals have as well is considerably different as well. Wild animals are out there and every day are sitting there in holding themselves onto tree. They've got trees and branches. They've got access to full spectrum lighting. They have access to a better diet. The food that they're eating tends to be better because it tends to be leaner as opposed to fatter, right? There's all different changes there. So there's so many different things, and eventually you'll tweak something, and then that'll be enough to get the animals to survive. And then you'll keep tweaking it. Eventually, you'll go, oh yeah, these things are easy to keep. And like as a classic example of this, right? 30 years ago, 40 years ago, right? There was people that were keeping Lathanotus, but they weren't keeping them well. They certainly weren't reproducing them. And yet now people are keeping and breeding Lathanotus, and because they've figured out how to do it. It's not that they're hard to keep. It's just that we weren't keeping them right. So,
I think the ability or the availability of new technologies and stuff definitely has a big hand in that too.
Oh shit, yeah. I can't wait for another 10 years when we catch up a little bit more to the fish people.
Yeah.
I think it also, and speaking on the fish people topic, you have many, obviously we have to play catch up with both the birds and the fish, right? Especially the aquascape and all that. But the same way that the fish guys went to go see where their fish were coming from, I feel like Lathanothus was just kind of like, look at this crazy dragon. And now it's like, oh, no. I know exactly what river delta those live in. We need to go take temperature readings and UV index and everything else, and I feel like that mindset is what's really changed and why people have been so much more successful with them, not because they cracked some kind of code, but because they actually put some thought into keeping them and caring for them.
Yeah, well, look at like Lepidus, Crotalus lepidus as an example, right? So, Lepidus and Clauberi and stuff like that. People go, oh yeah, I know where that animal's from because of its color, right? And then people are like, all right, well, I want rocks from that location to put in my enclosure, so my Lepidus are sitting in the right position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they look right. And man, how awesome is that? How good is that as a keeper? Is that people are like, right, I want to do this, and this is how I want to keep my animals. They're the people that we should be celebrating. You know what I mean? Rather than, all right, I can keep a Lepidus in a box that has a water bowl and paper towel, and the Lepidus probably doesn't mind too much, to be honest, which way it's being kept. But I'd much rather see a Lepidus in an enriched environment, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, one of my clobberi, I never had any flat facing rocks, and it wasn't until we saw them in the wild and the rumors of them stalking or in ambush position, looking up, not looking down like everything else. Yeah. So I did that, and literally the next day I walk in the room and the thing's fucking looking up at the ceiling. So there we go.
And it's using a little bit of muscle tone, right, to sit in that particular position, right?
Yep.
It's doing things the way it's meant to be doing, right? Now, it probably won't make that much of a difference to that particular cloud, right? But from a husbandry point of view, but it might. You don't know, right? Because their heads are, if they sit there, right, and their whole design is to sit with their head sticking up at a 45-degree angle for 8 to 12 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
And their blood pressure in their head is going to be slightly less than if the animal's sitting flat.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so while it may not make much of a difference, it might make a difference to the well-being of that animal.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So as a classic example for that is that if you were lying down with your seat reclined all the time, would you be comfortable as opposed to sitting up? Some people would. Some people it would annoy some people. Other people it doesn't. So it's one of those things that I do wonder at times whether we should be, tweaking little things all the time and changing things around in enclosures and stuff like that to try and see what's better for the animal. A little bit of stress isn't necessarily a bad thing either.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Well, gentlemen,
cool.
We're at the 2-hour mark.
All right. Sorry for jumping in
it's great, man. We haven't seen you in forever. No, not at all. Adding to it.
Cool. All right. Well, much love to everybody. I will catch you on the flip side.
Yeah,
thanks,
man.
buddy.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.
That was fun.
That was. This episode, once again, brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. You like racks? Cool. They've got some awesome ones. You like cages? Awesome. They've got some great ones too. Buy something, use the code THN at checkout, save yourself a little bit of money. And then if you also want to save some money and you also want to use that THN code, go over to fullofusapparel.com, grab some shirts, save yourself 15% off. If you're listening to this podcast, that is the exclusive discount code for people who listen and watch. Look at that. Look at that. Sharp boy. Check that out. Got some new stuff that I'll have to put up here soon. And then I'm working on figuring out the international markets thing and being able to sell in Europe and other, Australia and stuff like that. Basically, the biggest hurdle with that is like the taxes and duties and things like that, and making sure that I've got all the bases covered there. Yes, Corn Stars this coming Thursday is going to be back. We're going to be joined by Joe Peck. So me and Chris are pretty excited about that. Joe's a really good dude. He's got a ton of awesome stuff. So excited for that. And then Puget Sound Pythons, check them out on Morph Market. Give them a follow also on Facebook and Instagram. Great people, great animals. I mean, we're already following a ton of other people, so you might as well just hop on over and follow them too. So thank you, everybody.
Bye.